The Bob Murphy Show, episode 308.
There's a tidal wave coming. What you gonna do?
Get ready for another episode of The Bob Murphy Show, the podcast promoting free markets, free minds, and grateful souls. It's your source for commentary and interviews, conducted by a Christian and economist. Now here's your host, Bob Murphy.
Well, some of you are going to love this, some of you are not going to love it. The following conversation I had with Owen Benjamin. If you're not familiar with who Owen is, let me read from his intriguing and mysterious About section on his website. About Owen, the wild journey of Owen Benjamin. From upstate New York to Hollywood to the country of Idaho, Owen Benjamin has been on quite the journey. Known as many names, including the Big Bear and Bard King of Beartaria, Owen leads an inspiring life of truth and adventure. I have him explain a bit once we get into the discussion, in case he hasn't been on your radar, just so you know. Owen really was a successful professional comedian, very talented. He had music involved in his acts, and he commanded the stage. When he was up there, he was in charge, and it's like, oh wow, this guy, he's a real stand-up comedian. And then he couldn't keep his mouth shut, or wouldn't keep his mouth shut on certain issues, specifically transgenderism, and we'll get into that. And the powers that be did their best to deplatform him. And among other things, he is also known for very unorthodox views on certain historical events involving a large satellite of the planet Earth, and even whether we should endorse the heliocentric model. Okay, so I don't run away from those things. If somebody holds a really unusual view, I like to probe and just to see, how do you connect that with other views, and how does that all mesh? So anyway, that's what we do. If you don't like that stuff, what can I tell you? You probably listen to the wrong podcast. The main reason, though, I have him on is I think it was because of Javier Milei's speech to the WEF, but I'm not sure about that. But recently on Twitter, Owen has been sharing his views on anarcho-capitalists, and he's none too pleased with us. And so, in among other things, he kind of threw down the gauntlet and said, yeah, I'll do any of your guys' shows. Why don't you have me on? Let's talk about this stuff. And I'm certainly not afraid to debate my views on this. However, I should clarify, as you folks know, I don't do debates typically on my podcast. I really did just want to have him come on and have a conversation about this stuff to see if we can come to any resolution. Without further ado, here is my discussion with Owen Benjamin. Owen, welcome to the Bob Murphy Show.
Thanks for having me.
So you had mentioned you had a funny story. Do you want to open with that?
Oh yeah, dude. So this is my third stream of the day. So I have a farm and I have 4 kids and I homeschool and I do a 2-hour podcast a day. So my day's pretty tight. Mm-hmm. And I'm fighting with this dude, Bryson Gray.
The name's familiar.
He's like a black rapper who does more like uplifting family value rap. Mm-hmm. All right. So me and him start getting in this little back and forth because I'm making fun of him about like stealing a bike or something. And so he's making fun of me. We're doing funny racial stuff. But then I do a stream yesterday and I'm wearing this shirt because my bike was stolen in 1991 on May 24th on my birthday, a blue dyno. Just trust me, there's a payoff to this. It's hysterical. So I'm doing the stream and I'm kind of making fun of Bryce and we're having a back and forth.
Wait, hang on though. Do I need to see your shirt because it's not in the frame?
No, I'm not wearing it right now. But my other buddy made me this shirt because I've been doing a joke about a bike being stolen.
Yep.
On my birthday, 1991, right? So Bryson starts getting like a little nutty. He's like getting aggressive. So I always match and escalate aggression. I just went to war with like the country of India two weeks ago.
Yes.
And so And so I'm like, why is he being so nuts? And so then he's like calling me out. Oh, we got to do this live stream. I'm like, dude, let's do it next week. I'm really busy, dude. Like we got a schedule. He's like, oh, you want to run from me, coward, all this. So I'm like, listen, I'll do it. I'll do it while I'm doing cardio. I have to do cardio. I eat too many cookies, you know? And so I'm doing cardio and I'm like talking to this dude. And it turns out the reason he got so mental, and now we're like boys, by the way, is he's like, what's up with that shirt making like that shirt? You got that shirt with a stolen bike on it with May 24th? I'm like, yeah, my bike was stolen. It's my birthday. He goes, dude, that's my birthday. I'm like, wait a minute. When were you born? He goes, I was born May 24th, 1991. So he thinks I made this shirt making fun of him personally.
Right.
That's the day he was born was the day my bike was stolen, right? Mm-hmm. And so I believe in synchronicities because I see them all the time. But the odds of that are insane. So we're both dying laughing. I'm like, you thought I made a shirt like just to make fun of you with your birthday? He's like, you got the same birthday as me? I'm like, dude, look at my Twitter right now, May 24th. I'm like, my bike was stolen 33 years ago. And all right. So anyway, so I do the stream today about it. And my stream number is 1865, the year the Civil War ended. Mm-hmm. And I'm writing a movie right now called The Bike Thief about a dude whose bike was stolen and he becomes like a self-destructive racist. It's actually a comedy. And I'm like, will you play that part? And he's like, I'm in. And so the stars aligned today. And so that was been my day so far. So, and now we can talk about the role of government in our lives.
Yes, I definitely want to get into that. I would like to start out though with some other things to warm the crowd up here.
Let's get the people going.
Let's do it. So you came on my radar as a comedian. I enjoyed your work very much.
Thank you very much.
Among other things, you were the 1 foot long piano player, but you had a way of phrasing it that had a double entendre that was quite cute.
Yeah. I'm 6'8", huge. Yeah, you get it. Everyone's getting it. Everyone gets the entendre.
But you were, do I have this right? Am I remembering correctly that at one point, like, and you were successful, right? Like, and I know a lot of people say that, like, oh yeah, the man kept me down, but no, you really did have things that were clicking, and then you couldn't keep your mouth shut.
Rapid TAA. I've been in 4 Adam Sandler movies. I was the lead of a Netflix movie. I was the lead of a sitcom for 3 years. I was Vince Vaughn's closing act. I've done Leno 7 times. I have 2 Comedy Central specials, 6 other specials, headlining comedian, theater act. My picture was painted on the mural at the Hollywood Improv. So yeah, when people are like, oh, failed comedian, it's like, right. I'm the elite of, I'm not a Bill Burr or Kevin Hart, but I'm in the top 100%. And so 2015, 2016, I started speaking out about the trans child stuff. I have a kid. I see the horrors of abortion. Once I see a woman actually get pregnant, I start speaking out about this. I lose my agent, lose my manager, get blackballed. My colleges are saying I'm too transphobic. I'm not allowed to perform. So I start, it's like I had to start all over again. I'm doing tree work with my brother. I'm banned from every club. I'm banned from PayPal, Twitter, Facebook. I got kicked off Airbnb, and I've never even been accused of a misdemeanor, right? Because of course we see that the New World Order is in the private sector, and we'll get to that. So I saw that my greatest strength was through the government, where I could perform in a library when every other institution would ban me, because it's all, quote unquote free market, central banking. We'll get into all that. And the post office allowed me to have commerce and allowed me to grow. And I started building my own platforms again, thanks to the United States government. That protects the entrepreneur, protects property rights, protects my ability to have a farm. And I watch all these people, I don't even know where this is on right now, but I'm sure I'm banned from it. I mean, I had to sue Patreon once, and it was in a private court, jams. It was an absolute nightmare. And, the actual court, the United States court, sided with me when Jams tried to sue all of my listeners or Patreon through Jams, through the private arbitration, which is an absolute joke, corruption to a degree that's mind-blowing. So that's kind of where I'm at. And then I got to the point where I got really self-sufficient. I have no debt. I have no credit cards. I homeschool my 4 kids. I have a great wife. I grow my own food. And I do comedy every single day of my life. And I think about a bike that was stolen once 33 years ago, and I'm motivated by that, and everything's great. So I want to talk today about maintaining our government and all the protections it offers and the absolute hellish dystopia that is anarchy.
I do want to get into that, but first, can we do a quick rundown of the other thing that you're often known for and associated with is the conspiracy theories?
Yeah, like I don't think we went to do you think we went to the moon?
I would rather phrase it as your position, and I just want to ask you
Yeah, I'd
questions.
just like to know, do you think that they played golf on the moon, destroyed the evidence, and can't go back because we don't have the technology? Like, do you believe that's true?
I will say this for sure, that I listened, I think it was you on Dave Smith's show when you
Yeah.
made your case, and I was listening, and I was like, huh. And you said, like, oh, well, first of all, the head of NASA was like an ex-Nazi rocket scientist. And I was like, that doesn't sound right. And I looked it up, and it was right. That is
And
true.
Jack Parsons, who's a black magician who advocates pedophilia. Yeah.
And then I liked your point about that the telemetry data from that, that should be in the Smithsonian, and NASA's official position is they taped over it.
They taped over it. They taped over it because they had a limited amount of tapes. It's like right out of American Psycho. It's like, oh, I was returning videotapes, and people eat it up. They're like, oh, you're such a conspiracy theorist. I'm like, you're a moron then. Like, did you get lied to like this by everybody? Like, if I just tell you, that there's an invisible guy that says if you don't give me all your money, the world's going to blow up. Like, would someone believe that? And then you have Neil Armstrong saying that, he's like, we got there with less technology than you have in your iPhone today. And then they're like, why can't you go back? They're like, we destroyed the technology. It's too painful to rebuild. It's just too much technology. And people are like, ugh.
Yeah.
So that's, and I noticed a lot of anarchists love the moon landing. Like little Mikey Malice thinks I'm this like unhinged loon because I question the moon landing when literally NASA is basically a NAMBLA convention. It's like, I know some dudes that have been to federal prison, and every NASA scientist in there is in for the, why they're in there. And so it's an absolute disaster. Arthur C. Clarke, he had to flee America because he was accused of pedophilia. He lived out of his days in Sri Lanka. Of course, you have Isaac Asimov, whose son was convicted of having the most amount of child porn in American history. So it's like, the sci-fi world of NASA is absolutely insane. And so I'm just glad the federal government exists. You know what I mean? So,
well, but let's push this just for a moment, if you can, because another one that I liked, that I don't know if you made this point but it wasn't merely that they allegedly did this in 1969, and then 50 years later, the deadline keeps getting pushed back, and they keep coming up with reasons. But Kennedy in September of 62 threw down the gauntlet and said, within this decade, we will send a man to the moon and bring him back. And then they pulled it off. Whereas now, if somebody in 2022 said, we're going to do a high-speed rail between New York City and LA by the end of this decade, we all know there's no way they would do that on schedule. And yet
it's like, we went to the moon. Yeah,
yes, we choose to do the moon and these other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. And
we will sail the sea. I have a theory about it. I think that when we got off the gold standard, they had to like mind warp everyone. So they did like all these psyops, bang, 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 Woodstock, moon landing, Manson. I'm not saying they're like fake, but I think that they were really, really hammering people as they took us off the gold standard in 71. Because if you just did it without large psychological operations, I think people would be like, wait, so our money's worthless now? They're like, hey, check out Deep Purple. Ha! They were just hammering people. And the moon landing really did a number. I used to want to be an astronaut. I used to think about dinosaurs and all the nonsense. And we used to hide under our wooden cardboard desk because of the nuclear bomb threat. It's like that era was so riddled with ridiculous claims of, and I know it's all the financial system. And I get it. Like I've talked to some guys that are pretty high up freely about these things, and they have a point. They're like, what would you do, if you have to get off the gold standard and if you don't, 100 million people will starve. So you gotta run some ops. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. It's a free will world.
So what is your view that you think they went up and orbited a few times and then faked going out to the moon and coming back? And then
I don't
most of the
think they
people
left I mean, listen, man, I don't know. I'm not going to make any
Mhm.
claims
Mhm.
because I know whoever makes a claim has to provide evidence.
Right.
But it appears to me like they never left a movie studio. Like,
Okay.
why would they? I mean, it's like, it's nonsense. I mean, if you look at Elon Musk and Virgin Atlantic, like nobody is doing anything. It's all nonsense. I think they have really advanced technology. Like, I don't think everything's fake. You know, like that little pervert Michael Malice would be like, "Oh, Owen thinks everything he overdosed on red pills." No, I think there's directed energy weapons. I think there's like there's technology that's mind blowing, especially with surveillance stuff like that. Um, but I mean, the moon landing is absurd, and space itself is an absurd claim that, you know, that there's a vacuum that's been exploding for 27 billion years. They just doubled the amount of time again. And, you know, all this, all the science guys are so fluoridated and perverted, they don't even question it. They're like, the universe is 14.7 billion years of exploding. They're like, 27 billion years. And everyone's like, "Ugh." So the fact that I question that, if people call me a conspiracy, listen, one thing I will say, one thing that I pulled back on is accusing of conspiracy because I can't prove that. You know, and we can get into the flat earth stuff too. I don't know what the earth is. So I'm not going to make a claim like this is the right map. And I know that drives people crazy. They're like, well, if you don't have a solution, don't criticize it. I'm like, well, you know, 8 inches per mile squared, I can show you that isn't observable. And, you know, long range snipers don't factor it in and pilots don't factor like it. You know, that's a whole episode in itself, but I'm not going to make a claim as to what it is because I'm a comedian in a barn. You know what I mean? But same with the vaccine. I'm like, you haven't demonstrated that cures anything. So I won't be participating in that. And they're like, oh, well, prove it doesn't. Or I'm like, no, like I don't have to prove that. Like, you haven't sold me on a spinning ball. You know, it's like, I'm not sold. And then it drives people nuts when you don't want to consent to it. And I'm like, yeah, I just don't consent to that.
Okay, so maybe as an analogy, like it sounds like your view on some of these other ones is what I think about the Kennedy assassination. Like I spent a while looking at and I concluded the Warren report cannot be true. And then people say, "Oh, what do you think happened?" And I say, "I don't know. I'm just saying the Warren report's not true." And it sounds like that's what you're saying.
Yeah,
About
that's
some
the
of these other
most
things.
powerful position because you'll be fed. I see quote unquote truthers fall into this trap all the time. And I've been guilty of this in the past, where you realize something's obviously false and then you immediately jump to a new conclusion that you can't prove. And in the law, and it's like natural law too, it's not just about like our government. Whoever makes the claim, the burden of responsibility is on that person. So it's like, if you're going to say the vaccine like will keep you from getting a disease, you have to prove that to me. You know, I don't have to prove that it doesn't. You're the one making the claim. And the spinning ball claim is and I know this will trigger people and they'll think I'm like unhinged and nonsense, all that. But it's such an insane claim and the proof just isn't there. You know, like I was always told, oh, snipers factor in the spin. And I'm very, very close with a lot of highly trained snipers that teach classes on ballistics and all this stuff. And a lot of them are flat earthers because they'll factor in the temperature of the ground and they don't factor in a spin. So and then people go, oh, well, everything's moving at the same speed then. I'm like, yeah, but you're the one who said that there's a Coriolis effect and there isn't. Ballistic missiles don't factor in a spin. Yeah, and then they say, oh, well, a ship goes over the horizon. No, it doesn't. You can zoom in and it doesn't. 8 inches per mile squared means 8 inches of curve for 1 mile, 16 for 2, 32. It just keeps escalating. And in a very short amount of time, you're not supposed to be able to see across Lake Ontario. And I'm from Oswego, New York, and there are days when you can see Toronto across Lake Ontario, and that's not remotely possible on the claimed ball. So then Steel to Bike Tyson says, oh, it's in a Blake spheroid. It's pear-shaped. And they do that because they know that you can prove there isn't 8 inches per mile squared. And, you know, and then he'll say stuff like, oh, a professional field goal kicker has to factor in the spin and it's 1.5 inches. And I'm like, that's funny. One of my best friends was an All-American professional field goal kicker, and he's a flat earther because you absolutely do not factor in a spin ever. Like, that's insane. Same with pilots, same with all this stuff. And so I know that kills my credibility with people, but I don't care. It's like, prove it to me. No flat earther took a vaccine. No flat earther had a transgender surgery. Like, we're very stubborn people, and we're not usually very swayed by social shame or, being called names and stuff. I'm like, I don't care. I watch people walk off a cliff all the time, and I'm like, yeah, don't trust the Pied Piper, man. Have them prove it to you.
So speaking of cliffs then, and I realized a minute ago you just said, hey, it's not, the burden of proof is not on you. But I mean, if it isn't some type of sphere, do you think there's an edge? That's
I think it might be an infinite plane. I don't know. I think it might be like a toroidal field. I don't know. I mean, I have a lot of theories that I can't prove, but the common misconception is, okay, so is it just like a pancake floating in space? No, like it's applying that paradigm of like space, like, oh, look up at the sky, everything's a sphere. There are lights in the sky. So a street light has anything to do with the pavement? It's like, that's a light. Like, you don't know that Matt Damon is running around on Mars. You've been lied to by the Hollywood industry. It's why it's called DreamWorks. And so, and then they're like, oh, but explain the moon. I'm like, you explain the moon. You explain how you only see one half of it. It's got a tidal lock. It's covered in quote unquote craters, but you never see a crater get formed. And they lied about the moon landing, like blatantly lied about the moon landing. There's no chance they went to the moon. So it's like, the Bible says it's a light to rule the night. The Bible has nothing about a spinning ball. The Bible says, God is above, that God stopped the sun. It doesn't say God stopped spinning the earth. It's like, the Catholic Church was obviously flat earth and stationary earth, at least until Galileo. So for 1600 years, have they gotten more Christian since then? I mean, that's ridiculous. So, Galileo was punished and persecuted, if he even existed, because he questioned the earth being the center of the universe. And that was always the Christian position until they've gotten more corrupt and more ridiculous. And the heliocentric model that the sun is 93 million miles away and it's in a constant explosion. I don't know. It doesn't look like that to me. And, and people can call me dumb all they want, but like, I've been right about a lot of stuff other people are wrong about.
Okay, let me ask you the last one on this, and then we can move on to the fun stuff that people want to hear. Is, so things like the moon landing. Like I say, when I heard your original case, yes, there are lots of things, and I've gone to see the other, the people allegedly debunking it. And a lot of the stuff they say to me is not, So at the very least, I can definitely say someone who says I think they faked the moon landing, I am not going to say that person's crazy or, oh, come on, give me a break. Like okay. They
tilt up as they leave. Like, did they leave a guy on the moon? Literally, the moon lander goes up. It looks. I had Vivian Kubrick on my stream, and she goes, if my dad had shot that, it would have looked less ridiculous. So obviously it's fake. The question is, did Stanley Kubrick shoot it? Mm-hmm. And Vivian Kubrick, we're analyzing it, and it's so badly shot. Because I have a history of being in film and production, all that. It's so dumb. And so there's a tilt up. And so they claim that they that they used a robot from Earth to tilt it up as they're leaving the moon. And okay, if you're trying to do that with a robot from 500 feet away in 2024, you may take 40 takes. It's ridiculous of a claim. So you're telling me 1.6 light seconds away, the first time you tried it, they tilted up in a perfect shot as the moon lander goes up 3,300 miles an hour to like connect to the other guy, and then they land in the. It's like it's so unbelievably stupid that like I met up with a former NASA guy the other day. He was recruited by NASA, but then worked at the MIT. He was a nuclear or aero what's it called, astrophysics guy. And he started listening to me, and he showed the math. He's like, it's so preposterous that if you confront these people with it, they literally start to shake like you're questioning their God, and they'll just start sweating. And so a lot of us have ended up in North Idaho, and we're all buddies now. But it's a pretty clear, you'll show people these like obvious evidence, and they'll just start spiraling. And I'm like, okay, man, cool.
Okay, so I guess last thing I wanted to ask is though, are you okay saying it's more plausible that they faked the moon landing, that the Earth being a sphere is fake?
Well, the Earth could be a giant sphere, but it's not the size that they say it is, because 8 inches per mile squared is very, very, very simple, and it's not there. And I know that's going to drive people insane, but the math is extremely clear. And with like modern technology, the consumer can buy a P900 camera, go to a lake or go to an ocean and just do it themselves. And people are going to scream about this. Maybe it's a sphere that's so big that it's 1 inch per mile squared. I don't know, but it's definitely not 8, not even close. And there's absolutely no evidence whatsoever. Like my wife's used to be a structural engineer. There's no factoring in of any curve in any bridge ever made, or any pilot or anything. It's not there. And, Tesla or the Michelson-Morley experiment proved that the Earth wasn't spinning. And then, of course, Einstein was wheeled out. The guy who married his cousin was talked about, it's all relative. It's relativity. You can't judge anything because we're all inside an explosion. And you're like, okay, buddy, maybe you should stop with the incest before you tell people how to think. You know what I mean? Einstein's a freak. A dirty little freak.
So does he, or do you not think there's geosynchronous satellites in orbit, like for cell phones?
No, there's satellites, absolutely. But I don't think they're in free fall going 30,000 miles an hour. I mean, that's obviously crazy. I think a lot of them are attached to balloons. I mean, that's been proven. I mean, that NASA literally is the largest buyer of helium in the world, and they absolutely attach satellites to balloons. And it's really easy to direct them and to keep them in orbit and then do repairs and all that stuff. But again, it's not up to me to prove that, because to say, as a skeptical guy who clearly questions like the validity of something that, by the way, it's completely goes against Christianity, the spinning ball, that in the beginning there was an explosion and we're now on a spinning ball that in a universe that's expanding until it becomes cold and dead, and we're descended from mutated monkeys. Like, that's nihilism. That's absolutely. So our ancestors were monkeys. I think that I'm pretty into spellcraft. You say you like my stuff about the wizard, slaying the wizard spellcraft. The best lies are true. You just manipulate the timeline. So I think Big Bang evolution is true, but it's 9 months long. So I minored in evolution in college. My major was World War II history, focused on tyrannical government takeovers. I studied in the Czech Republic. So that'll lead us into the next thing. But so they say that there's the Big Bang, and then there's something called primordial ooze. So 4.1 billion years ago, the Earth was just liquid ooze and there was no life. And lightning struck it. And then magically there was a single, how Christians believe this is mind blowing. It's like, it's pure nihilism. It's like from the insane mind of Sam Harris. So there was just like a single cell, and then it mutated, and then it became multi-cell, and then it became a fish, and then it became a monkey, and then it became a person. even though, a lot of bacteria have a 1 second lifespan and no one's ever witnessed something change species. But my theory is that's the story of our conception. So the Big Bang is literally when our parents had a situation.
Mm-hmm.
Primordial ooze, you get it. I'm going to keep it PG for the kids. Lightning strikes is that zinc flash of so you have the single cell in the ocean, and then multi-cell, and then it becomes what looks like a tadpole, and then you look like a monkey, and then you're born. And so they're actually telling us the story of our conception: Big Bang, primordial ooze, single cell, multi-cell, sea life, monkey, us. That's true. It's 9 months long. It's not 4.1 billion years long inside of an expanding explosion. And our ancestors are not monkeys.
Okay. I'm all right with the, I've done a lot of episodes on intelligent design theory, so I'm okay with you on that one.
Good.
So why don't we proceed then to the, well, let me just one last thing before we move on to this. Is part of what you're doing, like why you dwell on these topics, let's say, and talk about them, is it so much that you're wrapped up in the particular theories, or is it more you want people to start thinking? Like, for example, I know you questioned that you say, I don't believe that they made an atomic bomb. And at first I was like, well, what about, and I just started going through and I was like, well, the whole point was like, Oppenheimer and all them, like just to know quantum physics is not enough to make an atomic bomb. And I realized, like, well, why do I think they have it? And I said, well, because the government shows me all this footage.
Right.
Like it's by definition, it's very secret. So I'm just saying it is interesting. So to be clear, I'm not saying right now I disbelieve that there are nuclear
I get
weapons.
it. You're still in the
I do get how you're like a lot of things that I took for granted. I realized, and I said, wait a minute, how do I know that that's true? Is that partly what you're trying to get people to do?
Absolutely. That's the win-win about it. Like I've proven myself wrong before, where it's like airplanes with jet fuel. I was like looking at the math. How could they possibly fuel up at these airports? It looked ridiculous to me. I'm diving in. Then I find out about the underground reservoirs at these airports, and I start really diving into how they're designed to hold this amount of fuel. And I'm like, oh, cool. But that's critical thinking. That's great. Like, that's what we're all supposed to do. And when you're looking at something like the nuclear bomb, you look at evidence. What's the evidence? Hiroshima, Nagasaki. There is no fallout radiation. They weren't even in the top 15 most destroyed cities. And Japan surrendered because Russia invaded Manchuria. So it's like, okay, so what's the evidence that there's a nuclear bomb? Well, we have these videos that are fake. I've done whole breakdowns of it. It's like becoming, like, I did a tweet that got like 30 million views because it's so obviously fake, but people just hold on. They're like, how dare you? You're schizophrenic. It literally is claymation. And anyone who's done any history in Hollywood or anything can watch it. It's like, so it destroys a building, but not the camera. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So the camera's fine. Then they go, oh, it zoomed in. Okay, well, at that angle, that would be 9 miles away. And why did the blast come from the same side as the camera? Like, you'll see the wave, and it's the same side as the camera. And then there's an interior shot of inside a house with like a doll, and it vaporized it. I'm like, okay, show me the camera in 1941 that would survive a nuclear blast, but not a building. And they're like, oh, well, it was in a bunker. It couldn't have been in a bunker. Like that, the bunker, the angle was like this. Okay. So if it was in a bunker, that would have been, if you just say, okay, it's 2 miles away, do a squared plus b squared, you do the, but that, you do your right angle stuff, you get the hypotenuse, and that would be a 9-mile zoom. Show me a lens that has a 9-mile zoom for an interior where the blast is coming from so the video is completely fake. It's like mindlessly fake. So then you say, okay, well, show me the evidence. Well, when they were testing nuclear bombs in the desert, Vegas, you would watch the mushroom clouds. There are large bombs. Like, I'm not saying there aren't huge bombs. There is depleted uranium poisoning and people have thyroid problems and all that. Like I don't say like war is fake. Like obviously there's crazy weapons, you know, but their claim that a nuclear bomb causes like this winter and poisons all the oceans and fallout radiation is provable nonsense. Hiroshima was no more destroyed than Tokyo or any of those. Like, look at how many people died, how much infrastructure was destroyed. It wasn't in the top 15. There were fire bombs. So what they would do is they would cover a city with incendiary, pop a giant explosion, everything burns. It didn't cause cancer. It's like there's people from Hiroshima that live to be like 100 years old. You know, it's like, it wasn't. And then you look at all the testing done in America. There's no fallout radiation 40 miles outside of Vegas. There's nothing. You go with the Geiger count, there's nothing there. And so it's a big, and then you have the testimony of Galen Windsor, who worked for the Manhattan Project and for GE. And he's like, oh yeah, it was TNT. Like they would do thousands of pounds of TNT, do a giant explosion, which creates a mushroom cloud. And then that was the psychological operation to control the world during the Cold War, where we have a button, you know, it's like two thieves are at a table. They both say we have a gun underneath the table. It doesn't matter if there's a gun or not. You know, that's going to stop conflict. And I'm not even against that. Like, that's the thing is I'm not even like, I understand the geopolitical reason why someone would create this monster to keep people from fighting. It may have saved lives. Like, I'm not like my truth or perspective isn't like, there's no good reason why someone would do a psychological operation at all. But I see the damage it does to my friends and people I know where they're like, oh, we're going to get nuked. We're going to get nuked. I'm like, dude, when I was 9 years old, they used to say that. And we do these drills under desks and the boogeyman's coming and it isn't happening. You know, your biggest threat is alcoholism, opioids, despair, suicidal ideation, economic problems, not being productive, not having a family, not connecting to other people, not having a community. Like, that's the nuclear bomb. And the irony is the spellcraft behind nuclear bomb is it's about the nuclear family. Like, that was the real, like, to divide the family is the real spell. To break up the family unit is the real destructive power of the quote unquote nuclear bomb.
Okay. One last thing I meant to ask earlier, and then I promise we'll get into the political stuff.
Cool.
You kind of had a passing reference earlier, that you went to war with India, and for people who follow you on Twitter, you know what that is. Someone's engaging in stereotypical humor, right? Are you doing that partly like everyone needs to lighten up, like a Don Rickles kind of, come on guys, let's all lighten up. There's a lot of serious injustice in the world, and you're mad about me indulging in a stereotype that half of you say at home anyway, but I'm just doing it on Twitter. Is that part of what?
Well, comedy is the only way people can ever actually get along. And I think withholding that masculine riffing and that masculine ability to make fun of each other will actually create the tension and the unreleased stress that where you could actually see horrible scenarios. And so what I was making fun of is I always make fun of bad behavior, whether it's making fun of whites stealing copper or doing bank fraud or blacks stealing a bike or the Pajeets, eating cow dung, you know what I mean? Or, it's stuff that is universally bad behavior. And so I'm not saying that one race is morally superior than another. Like, I don't believe that. Like, I don't think a white kid is born with a better soul than a black kid, like, at all, But like, to make fun of bad behavior in each group, especially when a group is starting to justify bad behavior with victim consciousness, where it's like, oh, I got to steal because, I was oppressed, or like, I got to bomb Gaza because they're just trying to hurt me, the Holocaust or whatever, it's like, no, you're still doing bad stuff. Or with the Indians, a lot of them will brush their teeth with cow manure. And I find that to be pretty gross. And I make fun of them for that.
And for people who think, what are you talking about? Like, in the comments when you tweeted about that, somebody posted a video to that very
They
thing.
have holidays where they literally roll around in cow manure. And now there's Indians that are not doing that. There's really high quality Indians, but it was when Vivek was running for president as a Brahmin Hindu, and I know a lot about a lot of cultures. And the way a Brahmin would treat a Kshatriyan, who would treat a untouchable, they treat them literally like dogs. And the culture there and the religion based around, I'm not going to get into it, but it's really dark. And the caste system about being born into a role where you deserve superiority over other people, not because of your character, but because of the karma of your previous life, is obscene. And so I'm going to, as an American, as a free American, I'm going to knock them down because they're not going to come to this country and try and institute an idea that your past life is why you have your position and you can treat other people badly because you have more money than them. And Vivek did a pharmaceutical pump and dump. He's a financial criminal, which is probably why he wants to get rid of the FBI, because I'm sure he's on their radar.
Okay, so I suppose as we transition now, I'm going to officially say, it's not like I hang out with them personally, but I do know Vivek and Malice, and
I'm sure you do. That's why I'm hitting them.
Okay, so obviously I'm not going to debate you on the merits of that.
So you think Malice, it's cool how he's promoting the trans stuff and the abortion and all that? Like, as a Christian man, you think that's fine?
I think it probably would make more sense for us to move on from that.
No, but just so you can't even say that killing a baby's bad. Like, you can't. Even say
killing
that.
a baby's bad. I'm saying
and
I don't.
Malice gleefully talks about how he's killed, he's aborted kids.
Okay, I literally never seen that. So
and the trans stuff, you never seen any of that. You never seen Michael Malice promote a man who cut off his penis named Blair White. You've never seen that.
I know he hangs out with Blair White. Yes.
Right. And so, you don't think that does any damage to young people? Any confusion, any sexualization of a very disturbed man? Like, there's no problem there at all because you guys are buddies.
I'm not saying we're buddies. I'm just saying that I know him.
Right. No, I know I get it, but I don't hold back with this stuff because it's not about hate. And I want people to know this. It's about love. I'm very paternal about innocent people, especially kids, exposed to this stuff in public. If people want to sodomize each other in their home, that's their decision. And I don't want the government to kick in their door and arrest little Michael Malice for his little perversions. But to promote it commercially and legally is insanely damaging to kids. And it's why I don't want to be a part of that. That's why I want more government regulation to pull that out of the commercial. Because I watched in my lifetime, they took the trans thing off the DSM-6 and they no longer said it was a mental illness. And so then they started marketing to kids. Teva Pharmaceuticals out of Israel, right? And then they started targeting kids with propaganda and marketing to get them to become trans. And that is a crime against humanity. And that is because of a deregulation from our government. And that's true. Okay. And I know Michael Malice. I don't hate the guy. It's not like I'm like have an axe to grind, but he won't debate me because I'm a moon landing conspiracy theorist. And he pretends like he has a moral superiority to me, even though he promotes trans, abortion, a lack of government, a lack of governance, a anarchy, right? That would, if we deregulate anymore, people are going to see a living hell. And so if anybody ascribes to the God of Jesus Christ, how could anyone possibly? Jesus said that, if you lead my children astray, millstone to the neck. And so you're looking at people showing a mentally damaged man who's dressing like a woman, cutting off their own penis and saying that that's a beautiful woman. Like, that's the definition of damaging the youth.
Okay. So I definitely have done a lot defending what is called anarcho-capitalism. Just so you know, Owen, I stopped volunteering the term anarchism for that because I am a Christian. I thought, well, there's a sense in which I'm a monarchist because I have a king. And so I thought that was a more accurate, but certainly what people mean by extreme radical libertarianism, deregulation, I endorse that. So I'm happy to
You
talk
want
about that.
less, right? You want the commercial space to have more access to sin. Like
No,
fentanyl, like where was there a bottom or just keep going with it?
no, it's what I am against is using violence to try to make the world a better place. And so that's the framework that I'm using it from. So
What about violence against a criminal?
So I personally call myself a pacifist. I mean, there's extreme, someone's going to do something to my kid and I don't see any other way I'm going to do what I have to do. But right, even there, I would personally want to use any possible means to try to diffuse a situation without resorting to violence. And if I did have to, I would forever after.
Irony, though. The irony is my position of regulation would diffuse the situations before they would ever even happen. If you make it so that you can't even start with this stuff, you ban usury, ban sodomy, ban drug distribution, keep everything private, then you don't get to a point where these exploitations are happening in public to the degree where people are going to get violent. They're going to get violent because it's going to get to a degree where if your utopian dream of anarchy reaches its next level, the most profitable businesses will be sex with children, selling children, right? Because you can have a contract with a consenting 6-year-old. There's nothing stopping that. There's nothing with the NAP or any of this stuff with the non-aggression principle that would stop a starving 6-year-old with a crazy dad from selling them on a billboard in a public space. So it's like, if you have that, you're going to have a violent reaction. And so I'm a man of peace myself. I don't fantasize about violence. I don't like violence. But like, if you limit that exploitation, you will have people much, much less likely to commit violence where, you have decency codes with women. You don't put them in a situation where they're drinking vodka with Michael Malice and a trans at 3 a.m. doing cocaine, right? That's a terrible position to put a woman in. And then if she is taken advantage of by a complete stranger, what do you do then? Are you a pacifist? So I would like to go before any of that ever happens and say that shouldn't be allowed. Like a woman should not be at a bar getting drunk with strangers at 3 a.m, putting them in that position, because then you are going to potentially have to hang a rapist. And I believe in capital punishment for rape. I believe in capital punishment for murder. I don't believe in capital punishment for theft. I don't think that it's ever okay to take a life for a property damage. But if you rape a woman or if you kill somebody, you should hang for that.
Okay, let's try to unpack some of this. So were you in favor?
Unpack that. That's great.
Were you in favor of alcohol prohibition as it was enforced in the United States?
Yeah.
Okay. Now,
even though I think they did it for a sneaky reason, I think they did it to get rid of private stills because farmers were making an alternative to gasoline, and the Rockefellers are trying to monopolize energy. And so I think that's probably why they did it. But I would like to see alcohol. If you want to drink alcohol, I think that you should make it yourself or do it privately. And you shouldn't be allowed to market it to kids because it's the young mind when they see all their favorite influencers getting wasted and having so much fun, and then they throw their life away. That's damage. For the record, I'm not in favor of a police officer kicking in anyone's door and searching them for drugs or searching them for alcohol or policing their sexuality or any of that. But the commercial space, the public space should stay clean, especially when you're dealing with anywhere with children or anywhere where there are impressionable minds that look up to an idol and say, I want to be just like Magic Johnson getting AIDS or whatever. It's like, that should be kept from kids. Like Kim Kardashian should not be allowed to market that lifestyle to any young girls.
Okay. So, but again, just to make sure we're getting your point. So you're okay with people making
Drinking
alcohol and drinking it? You just don't want, and even are you okay if two adults go, in a shop
Out of
somewhere
money,
and
okay.
change money for beer as long as
Yeah,
kids aren't involved?
Yeah. I think private memberships, I think you should be able to buy and sell psilocybin mushrooms if you want. If it's like a private membership where two consenting adults are like meet somewhere privately, it can't be marketed, it can't be in the commercial or public space. Um, that's their decision. Yeah, of course. I'm the same way with raw milk. Like I sell raw milk privately and it's totally legal. And I'm like, yeah, but it's all about the public marketing. It's about people having access to getting more customers, like making them customers. That's the problem I have when it comes to sin, when it comes to things that objectively damage them. Now, if you want to get into some interesting conversations, like my big sin is cookies. Like I battle that. My wife makes these amazing cookies, like refined sugar, you could argue is more dangerous than cocaine. I mean, people get diabetes, they get fat, you know? So that's why I don't want to police people's behavior, but it's like, it's about getting like kids addicted to it. I don't like that at all. And I think that we need more regulation, especially when it comes to sodomy, usury, and, stuff like that.
Okay, so what if somebody says, yeah, Owen, that would be great if we had the government that we could trust to do that, but these are literally the people that, covered up for Epstein all that time. And so, the last people in the world you would want to turn to make sure our morals are upheld is the political class.
Well, I hear that all the time. The government is a representation of the people's morality. So like people are like, oh, the government are so gross. They're a bunch of pedos. They're all such perverts. I'm like, I mean, look around. Like I think that you get the government you deserve. And I think if we demand more morality from the government and in our personal life, we don't engage in these activities, I think that you would see a much cleaner government, like a Switzerland or a Saudi Arabia or a Singapore. Like Singapore, you throw gum on the ground, they cane you. And I think that's why it's so clean there, because they have a high demand for cleanliness. In America, it's like, you get the corruptions in the government just represent the people's will. And you can't not have a government. This is something that I think a lot of anarchists don't understand, is that is a position that will be filled, whether it's a gang, a cartel, a guy with a dream. Like I would make Dave Smith a slave just to prove a point. You know what I mean? It's it's like if there's no government, like there is no monopoly on force, everybody has force. And then you start getting into that when a government falls, like Ukraine right now is a disaster because anybody with a dream can do the force and do that. And so to have a system with a public trust where you have like the laws outlined, like right now our government, I think, has too many laws. They should be simpler, but they should be more direct and more regulated. Like I think that having 8 million laws isn't super helpful. I think it should just be like, these things are all banned, this is the regulations, these are the punishments. And I'm very, very in favor of that. And I think the idea of not having a government, most anarchists, it's not that they don't want rules, because they all want rules. Michael Malice, I mean, if you look at him, of course you want rules. It's you don't want repercussions. And that's what the dream of the anarchist is I want to be able to do anything I want and nothing's going to happen to me. Because if you have no government, anyone can make a claim against anyone that believes they're doing damage to them. So imagine if there is no government and you see two fellows walking down the street, sodomizing each other, and there's a kid around. That person would then say, we have been victimized, like you are doing damage. So I will now extract that from you. And there is no governing body to regulate that. And so the irony about anarchy is the biggest, advocates of anarchy would be wiped off the planet in like literally a week, because they would be the most damaging to people. And the people that wanted, to extract that, to get justice, if you got someone promoting baby killing and like, you're like, okay, that's murder. And right now we have a government that protects that. So I want a government that's more moral and more regulatory, because if it were to fall, I mean, these people pushing for anarchy would be wiped.
Okay. Again, a lot there. So one thing you said earlier was that, the government is a reflection of the people. So
Yeah.
certainly, like, the current United States is a cesspool in terms of, my value system and certainly any kind of biblical standard. But to me, that shows, well, you're not going to fix that by saying, oh, how about let's have majority, a popularity contest, picking political officials who everyone agrees are like the worst dregs of our society. Like, oh, you got used car salesmen and politicians, ha. That's not going to make us more and more. So, like, when you pointed to other societies that are more courteous and well behaved, I don't think it's because they have a more stringent government. I think it's just their people have a better culture, at least in those dimensions.
Yeah, but the people will always demand a government. Like a government, it's a vacuum. So, like, if there was no government, no protection of commerce, you would have pirates, you would have vandals, you would have all this stuff, and people would say, okay, well, how are we going to have a system so we can deal with this and protect ourselves? And then you start establishing a government. You establish a group of people that's willing to control the commerce, regulate currency, keep people from doing fraud, you know, and that's how a government emerges. And so, yeah, I mean, we don't live in a democracy; we live in a republic, and that's one reason why, there's this big push to make people think we live in a democracy, but it's not. It's a constitutional republic that protects the rights of the individual, and it actually is still doing a fairly good job. And I know it's super cool these days to say America sucks and everyone sucks and all this, but we have a pretty good thing here. And if anybody wants to go experience the utopia of anarchy, they can head on over to Ukraine, which is where Michael Malice's people are from, and they can dance around in the streets. My buddy's Ukrainian and his uncle just got murdered for his car. So that's fun. Or they could head on over to the Sudan, and check out how great that is. But in the meantime, I would really like to maintain the American system of governance, and try and work at it from the ground up, where we drink less, we take out less loans, because the inflating of the dollar is about the fractional reserve banking system. So every time someone takes a loan, which is banned in the Bible, but someone takes usury, the dollar loses its buying power and home prices go up because you only have to put 10% down. So you're literally, the Muslims say usury is declaring war on God. And so that's why people are facing a housing crisis. The sodomy is why people are facing a population decline and a weak populace. Sodomites are not good at manual labor. I don't think Michael Malice has ever picked up a shovel in his life. You know what I mean? And so the trans, like Blair White, isn't going to be able to pick a berry. These people are mentally damaged. And so you don't want your next generation to end up like these people, because they have serious mental problems and their labor is weak. They're entitled. They're nasty, and you just don't want that to spread. And so that's why I want more regulation and a stronger population with larger families.
Okay, so for example, I think you made a rhetorical move there that just, to me, it doesn't make sense, where you want to show how bad anarchy is. And so you say, go look at Ukraine, where there's two governments that are fighting each other, fueled by...
in Ukraine. There's no more government in Ukraine. The men have been brought to war, slaughtered. And there is no local government. There is no way to call the cops or go to a justice or something. It's a fallen place. It's a pure anarchy. And I saw people moving to Ukraine in 2015 because they're like, oh, Zelensky is this little Jewish guy, and he's like, he's going to deregulate Ukraine. He's going to really make us a lot of money. And people started making a lot of money, and they started deregulating, and they started becoming more and more corrupt, saying the government's bad, just like what's happening in Argentina right now. Just wait, that's going to get ugly. And so then, they start going nuts. Wars break out. The men get pulled from their homes. There's no more local government. And then you all get to dance and sing in the streets with anarchy. And it is an absolute living hell. And then people can try and flee to America because we still have a stable system, a stable government, even just zoning laws. These anarchists are like, who is anybody to tell me okay, so you live in a house, you have a farm, and someone builds a coal mine next to you, No, you would have a problem with that. And you would have tribal war if you didn't have people come together and establish protocols. So you have to have 10 acres or more where I live. You have to have at least 10 acres. You can't subdivide and have a ghetto move in because that would lower our property value, would destroy the entire neighborhood. So we've all come together and we established that we have zoning laws. You can't have heavy industry or ghettos. And so you have your anarchists who want to exploit and rape and pillage communities like mine and deregulate so that they can build a ghetto right down the street and make, a lot more money and then destroy everything about this culture. In anarchy, you have no borders because free market means free movement of labor. You can't stop El Salvador from coming here and working for $3 an hour, destroying the man's ability to make a living, have a mom be home with the children. You're now racing to the bottom where everyone has to outcompete the scum of the earth. You no longer have any racial homogeny. People are just moving and getting transported. That's why there's an active move to make them like sodomites, because a gay man will move all over the world and you can put them anywhere you want, like an interchangeable little piece, and you don't have to pay them as much. You just have to give them access to alcohol and sex. And I know that sounds dark, but I know your listeners right now, as mad as they might think, what I'm saying resonates because it's true. So when you have borders, they have to be governed by a government. So when you see open borders that anybody can flood in and tank the labor, you have men making $25 an hour that can feed their families, and now they're competing with people making 10. Those people come in, they have a lot of criminality. Now that man can no longer afford his house. He's in mortgage debt because usury is not illegal. Okay, there might be a divorce. There might be all the exploitation. Meanwhile, you go on your highway and you got a big billboard selling drugs or gay sex, right? And like that isn't regulated. So anarchy is a race to make as many slaves as possible, exploit them, and spit out their bones. And the irony is, if they actually get more of what they want, these elitist, utopian urban people are the first to get wiped. And that happens all the time. As someone who studied this in the Czech Republic, whether it's Hitler's brown shirts or Lenin's, like he had a whole squad too that like were really diehard into that. They always get wiped after the people get power. So there is no anarchy. There's just a fake vacuum that's created so another group can get in that exploits. And that's why I do these shows now, because I want to educate people that may be naively thinking that, oh, if we don't have rulers, everyone is just great. That is absolute nonsense. I have a lot of people in the police force, and there's scary, scary, predatory people out there in them hills. And if there wasn't a government, they would come ransack your house. And that is a fact. They're on methamphetamines. They're highly armed. And we need a justice system. And if there was a vacuum, another one would emerge, and it would probably be a Mexican cartel or one of these gangs. And that's a fact. It's not even a debate. It's a fact.
Okay. Again, a lot there. Let's take the immigration
I
one.
love that. I love when you always unpack. It's super funny.
Okay, the immigration thing. One way to respond to that would be to say, oh, and right now, as we're recording this, there's a huge conflict where the local authorities in Texas are trying to defend their borders, and it's the federal government coming in and literally cutting the wire. And there are debates about, should we just send troops in to prevent them from protecting the border? So if you're saying we need
in anarchy, there are no borders.
Well, then we're using the terms differently. Like,
no, you're still in the paradigm. It's the same with flat Earth. You're saying, is it like a disc in the empty space? You just said the word border, local government. Mm-hmm. So now you're doing the issue between the federal and the states' rights. It's still a state. That's still a government. So that's a whole different, but you're still assuming borders. The anarchy is pure hell. It's do as thou wilt. So with anarchy, there is no debate about how much do you guard a border, because borders don't exist. Violence is required for guarding any border. So this idea of pacifism is nonsense. Okay. And I don't want to sound mean, but it's like, if people are trying to invade, like people are like, oh, Anarchists, I hear it all the time. Well, just stay off my property. Where do you get property rights? Who grants you your deed? It's like, okay, without that, you'd have to defend with violence your property every single day of your life, which you could not do because you need a united front to guard against any pirates. So the idea of no government is absolute nonsense.
Okay. So the way I'm using the term, and again, I told you I stopped volunteering the word anarchism because for some people it literally means no rules, period, and that's not.
Thank you for that.
But I believe in private property, and so when you say what would the border be, it would be the boundary. And I grant you,
your private property.
Well, I believe in natural law, and so I think there would be just
natural
like
laws. Might makes right. Silverback takes it. I hate to burst your bubble, man, but it's not even debatable. Natural law. I'm around.
Okay, well, it's not like you're the first person to say that to me, so it's not you saying it's not bursting my bubble.
Do you have animals? Do you farm or have animals, or are you around nature a lot?
No.
I am, and I'll tell you right now about nature. The big rooster that can peck the hardest gets all the hens. Natural law is not respecting pacifism. Pacifists can only exist within a state. That's why dudes like you should be holding on to the federal government with both hands. Because the federal government allows you to live in a world where you can claim to be a pacifist. In natural law, anyone with a bat now has your land. There are no property rights. There is nothing like that. It's nonsense. You got something someone wants. It's like, oh, I'm a pacifist. Oh, that makes it easier. And that's the truth, dude. That's the fact. Like, people always assume private property. Oh, yeah, I respect private property. Your private property is granted by giant guns and bombs. That's it.
Okay.
And I do my violence. I have to kill my animals to eat them. I know all about violence.
Are you okay in the book of Samuel? The Israelites are asking for a king. They want to be like the pagan nations. And Samuel says, no, you don't want a king. You don't want to be like them. Do you think that was wise counsel for them?
I don't know enough about that.
Okay.
Like, am I against a king? I'm not against a king.
Okay.
I'm definitely like, dude, there's all kinds of stuff I change about the government, but it's like the idea that there isn't a government is not, it's like little kids playing in a tree fort in a house provided by their parents. It's just like, it's mind-blowingly dumb to me. And I see this like, oh, no rulers. Like, what? You know, it's like a stage of development. It's like a 3-year-old being like, I'm daddy. It's like, okay, man, we'll see about that.
Okay, so I think part of what's going on here, are you okay with the claim of if somebody says, you know what, I don't think taxes should be used to fund so-called governments or public schools. I think it should all be voluntary and private. And if there's kids that can't afford it, the community probably would chip in. Are you okay with that, to say there's no reason that formal schooling has to be provided by the political system?
You mean like get rid of public school?
At least in terms of being funded by property taxes, even if some people say, I don't want my money going to that.
I don't think it really matters, because people just, what are they going to do about it? You know, it's like a lot of people are like, is it that I homeschool? Like I do all this stuff anarchists like think about. I've went down all the roads. I want to raise my own animals, raise my own food, raise my own kids. I want to be as like, I live in a narco-capitalist dream. You know, I even like to trade in silver. Like I think about these things all the time. It doesn't even matter. You know, if they say that's the taxes, what is anyone going to do about it? I'll tell you what you can do is amass a lot of wealth and influence with being very, very productive in a small area. And then you can influence government, or you can run for office. That isn't super effective. You know, getting commercially very successful, providing a lot of jobs in an area, you can start influencing government. Outside of that, you know, enjoy the flushing toilets, eat the food, and, you know, watch Netflix, because it doesn't matter what anyone wants.
Okay, let me try it this way. You're okay with there not being a global government, right? Like a one world government? You don't
Yeah,
think
but anarchy is pushing towards a one world government. Because if you try and take down the American government, it's a demolition to bring in the next phase, which would be a one world government. It wouldn't be, people are like, oh, the dollar's so corrupt. So what's your answer? Let me guess. A one world crypto where every single thing you do is tracked on a blockchain. Let me guess. It's out of Israel. You know what I mean? It's like it's such an obvious con. And so that's why I'm very in favor of the United States government lasting and being prosperous. And I'm very supportive of it as an American. I want my own government. I don't want to be ruled by the Israelis. I just don't.
okay, so then why should the people in Texas have to be ruled by the DC-ites?
Because they've been conquered. Like, and if they want to get stronger, they have to, they hire the Mexicans to pick their fruit because they want cheap fruit. They want to go see Joe Rogan, a dwarf on DMT, tell them to pump each other. It's like, that's their choice. Like, they have a series of bad decisions. And if they want to secede from DC, be prepared to go to war, and they won't win. It's like they play make believe. I've been to Texas. It's like they're playing a game of make believe. And the government, it's like if they want to go to war with the federal government, they can try. But, Texas is not as strong as they claim to be. They love getting drunk and having foreigners pick their fruit and, foreigners watch their kids and foreigners make their pornography. It's just like, it's a joke. I think they should really appreciate flushing their toilets and just, call it a day, because it's just nonsense. It's like listening to slaves whine. You know what I mean?
Okay, but isn't your answer just saying might makes right? Like, why couldn't someone say to you,
they don't have might. They don't have might. They're
okay,
slaves.
but couldn't someone say to you, like, you don't like advertising to kids? Well, tough. We beat you. So we're right and you're wrong, and shut up. You're a
Right.
slave.
That's why I'm on this show right now, because I know what you guys want. Yeah. And I think that really corrupted morality doesn't last, and it doesn't make for a lot of strength. So that's why if you guys get your way and you start advertising the pornos on the street, people that resist it, like the Amish, the Mennonites, the Mormons, the Muslims, they will absolutely take over, because you guys will have no birth rate. You'll have no wealth. It'll all be paper money debt. You'll be engulfed in your own sin. You'll live out fantasy worlds that there's no violence in nature. And I don't want to see that. I would much rather have people appreciate what they've been given and really grow with what they've been given. Like, we have been given an amazing country, an amazing time to be alive. And, we can be granted LLCs and start businesses and thrive and grow our own food and have a well and raise our kids. It's like a miracle. And so all these little anarchists that love thinking about how they want to push the envelope more, it's like, it's gross. It's grotesque.
Okay. And I understand there are some self-described anarchists who do embrace, a nihilism and
Michael Malice.
what we would say is, I am not going to.
I know.
Say,
I get it.
Say him.
I
Okay.
will. I'll say yeah.
All right. But there's other ones who aren't. And so, for example, if you're claiming you think on net, the federal, state, and local governments in the United States right now protect kids from debauchery and disgusting thing, I would say no. Like, what are they being?
The only thing keeping these nihilists back is regulation. And you're watching it right now. From the time we were kids till now, regulations went down. They legalized sodomy. They legalized the trans movement. And now they can market it to kids. What happens if there's less government? What happens if these nihilists get any more control with their like, the Federal Reserve is a private industry, and it's the most profitable business in human history. And you can't ban it. You can't ban that Federal Reserve because it's a private company. It gives you unlimited nonsense, funny money. And so it's like the government is a hoop that they had to jump through. And so as long as they can just pump and pump and pump, no one gives loans with gold. No one gives loans with silver. They give loans with money because money's pointless. They love that liquid heroin, man. They love that fiat. And it's like, go ahead.
Okay, so the Federal Reserve was created by an act of the federal government, and I would say it's propped up by all sorts of coercive measures that the federal government uses.
Nope.
And no, you don't.
Zero. No. The Federal Reserve was resisted by the government until it wasn't in 1913 on Christmas Eve, after they conspired on Jekyll Island, and they brought in the most profitable business in human history. It's called usury. It's declaring war on God, according to the Muslims. And that means they can literally print money out of thin air, and people are completely addicted to it. Okay, so if the government deregulated heroin and fentanyl, would that raise or lower the amount of use? Obviously, it would raise the amount of use. The government was holding back usury. Credit cards were illegal until the 50s. Sodomy was illegal. When people talk about make America great again, back then, everything was illegal. Fornication, credit cards. You're not getting a credit card paying 15% so you can go watch Nickelback. Like, that's nonsense. And that's when America had real families, real strength, real productivity. People got addicted to that debt. They're like, well, I can't afford a house, but I can get a loan and pay. And then it just, you're screwing over your neighbors. The government did not do that. The government was a hoop they had to jump through, and it shows you that they had to do it on Christmas when the government was out and they were manipulative to get it through the government. And then once it was through, there's no going back because people got completely addicted to it. It's like the opium wars in China. It's like once people got a taste of fiat currency where they didn't have to be responsible. I lived in a barn with my family for 3 years, so I didn't take out a mortgage. All right. So I walked the walk. I'm not going to be a part of that system. I'm not looking to be violent at all. I'm looking for people to rise up their morality so that we can live in a great country. And if you can't even say, Michael Malice has anything wrong going on. I mean, and again, I wish him well. I really do. I hope Michael Malice is he can be funny. Sometimes some of his tweets make me laugh. But if he's going to say that I'm unhinged because of the moon landing and he's going to push trans on kids, I'm going to make fun of him. Because what you consent to grows and what you condemn shrinks. We're in a free will realm and God is great.
Okay.
Let's unpack that.
No, I'm going to do a different one. FDR comes in, the orders everyone has to turn in their gold under penalty of a 10-year prison sentence or a big fine. I would say that's government coercion, and that's partly explaining how the violence of the political institutions maintain our current corrupt financial system. Are you saying no, in 1933 that was deregulation?
So what's the question specifically?
I'm asking, do you agree?
Still hold the gold, and then it went up in value if you just weren't a pussy about it. Like a year and a half later, it went up to like 45 an ounce. But what happened then with the Breckinridge and all that stuff you're talking about? That was America making a move on the whole world, where we wanted we wanted the fiat dollar to be the world reserve currency in place of gold. Vietnam War kicked off because France wanted their money back.
Right.
Do I think governments are corrupt? Of course. Like, I'm not saying like our government is just filled with good people, but it's the best we got. I mean, if our government failed and we started and then we broke apart, it would be, Texas would be Mexico. It'd be ruled by a cartel, no question. Little Joe Rogan would probably be someone's slave. I'm not even kidding. You ever see cartels, how they handle stuff, how they handle a pacifist? Skin them alive and hang them off a bridge just to make a point. Family members, and people are like, oh, our government, they attack people. It's like not even close to what happens when you have a void, when you have a vacuum. And then you have cartels and gangs, which are just upstart governments. And then they fight viciously to see who gets the ring. And in that time, it's massive carnage. And then once they get that spot, they have to establish a trust with the people. Because if they're not, like if the government is too corrupt, then mafias will emerge. And if the people support the mafia, which is what happened in Sicily, because the mafia was more just than some of the government, then that's an issue for the government. You can actually put a government out of business by doing that. Our government is more moral than the gangs still right now. We're running into an issue with Yemen because our best little buddy Israel over there, usually the American military's goal is to keep supply routes flowing, kill pirates, right? I get that. Someone wants to take our stuff or what we protect, bomb, kill, shoot, right? Yemen is having an issue with the genocide going on in Gaza. And so the fact America has a lower morality than the pirates, now that's an interesting thing. So we might see power shift to more Islamic nations. That we could see that because, the government has to maintain a moral standard. And if we go below, Qatar, I mean, that's going to be a real shift in power. Same with Russia, China, the BRICS nations, all that. Interesting times.
Yeah. So I think we can both agree that people need to clean up their own lives, do everything they can to make themselves, wean themselves from dependence on these external forces. I guess the big disagreement is, I think the existence of, I don't want to use the term government because, the church is a form of government, the family is a form of government. So I get that. And the system I'm envisioning, there would be rules and laws. It's just, it'd be.
Tell me what you would see. Like, okay, because you are being a very gracious host. I appreciate you.
Okay.
You're letting me, say stuff, and you're being nice. You're not getting emotionally triggered. Like, you seem like an honorable person, honestly. What would you do? Because I'm not here I don't know all the answers, man. It's like, what would you do? Like, if you were to replace the government, and I'm being extra rhetorically aggressive with a Malice and guys like that, because they need it. Like, those guys need their egos checked because what they're advocating for, they are not prepared for. Like, I am not on the chopping block at all. No debt, rural area. I know all my neighbors. I grow my own food. If the government were to fail and the systems break down, the dollar collapses, cities are gone. All right. So what I'm advocating for actually would help a Michael Malice. That's the irony. Like, I'm not trying to attack a guy like that, but I will be emotionally antagonistic so that things move, because dialectic doesn't get the people going like rhetoric. And so I want to ask you, what would you do? Like, if you think the government's coercive and violent, like, what would you replace it with?
So for sure, I am in favor of secession for areas that want to break away. So like, if Texas wanted, if the people in Texas wanted to break away from the federal government, I would say, yes, they should do that. And the U.S. military should not bomb them into submission.
But why wouldn't they bomb them? Like, why would they take a rebellion like that without fighting? Why would someone just give up their property? Like, the American government owns Texas. Like, they won. They got the land. So like, if you're going to go against the federal government, why would they just let you have it? Like, they would fight you.
But
right?
I mean, that's a separate question though, right? You're just like, what with the 13 colonies, why would they leave Great Britain? And
but they had to
king
fight.
Didn't want to let them go, and they fought.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, I can still say I don't think Putin should be invading Ukraine. Right. I mean, that doesn't mean
but
he's
Ukraine
not going to do
was
it.
joining NATO, which they said they wouldn't. And that would mean NATO, like America basically is on the border of Russia. He kind of had to.
Oh, okay. I mean, I know there's a lot there, and I'm not buying into the standard mainstream narrative. Okay. Certainly there are, I mean, you said you study totalitarian regime. Stalin should not have had a gulag. Okay. I mean, you can make claims like,
the irony right now is filled with anarchists. That's what makes it so funny. Have you read Gulag Archipelago or any of that stuff?
Some of it. I haven't read the whole thing.
Yeah, it was all filled with the very people that wanted to overthrow the king. That's what makes it so hilarious. So Stalin was a thug. And so Lenin, the Bolsheviks, Trotsky, all those guys, they did their glorious revolution. And they overthrew the czar, claiming that he was corrupt, just like the anarchists are doing right now, where it's like, oh, he puts 2,000 people a year in prisons. So they overthrew it. They made promises they couldn't keep up. Everybody has their own right to be free and nobody owns anything and natural law and all this nonsense, right? And so then the realities kick in, and all the very people that overthrew the czar Stalin recognized them as threats to the state and put them all in the gulags. Solzhenitsyn was one of Lenin's guys. And he gets sent to the gulag because Stalin knew exactly what these people were up to. They were destructive anarchists. They were opposed to order. And so when Stalin was reforming a lot of these things that were absolutely destroyed after these anarchists, communists, whatever you want to call them, that making claims that breaking the social order, making claims that can't possibly be met. He put them all in a gulag. The farmers, the good guys, like the guys that are just productive, having families, they didn't get sent to the gulag because the state needed them. They needed them to grow food. And so then when they all fled to America and started, Google and whatever, all these, like all these glorious Bolsheviks come to America, they tell the story exactly the opposite. Like that it was like, oh, they were so productive but oppressed. It's like they were all this intellectual elitist nonsense that sat around all day, piping their opinions, pushing degeneracy, pushing sodomy, pushing usury, and they were opposing the order of government. And so as soon as the government got its position, they wiped them. Same with, the killing fields of Cambodia. It's the same story over and over again. You got Pol Pot gets his role and then kills everyone who supported him because he knew how much they sucked. He killed everyone with glasses. All these like intellectual ivory tower violences, whatever, those guys, once they get in, the guy in control of the military wipes them out because they know that those guys are going to start trying to degrade his power. And that's what genocide is. That's typically what happens.
So let's try a different example.
Yeah.
Okay. In Rome, the Christians, they're a new group. The emperor doesn't like them. The Christians say that, no, we serve God, we serve Christ. And the emperor, he's feeding them to lions and stuff. To me, it wouldn't be a criticism of them to say, how ironic, the very people that are against, the emperor are the ones getting fed to lions. Ha ha. Like, how does that prove that they're getting what they deserve, or that, they should have known better than to say that they don't support Rome?
You'd be surprised how much I don't feel comfortable talking about something that happened 1900 years ago. I need to know a lot more about it. I can speak on what I witness every single day. And like the righteous salt of the earth people are never attacked by the state from what I see. That's just what I see. I'm around Amish and Mennonite and Mormons and all these people. They don't want this, like they're not in direct conflict with the state. So the state doesn't do anything to them. The state usually goes after people that affect their ability to control commercial, which is, gangs, cartels, stuff like that.
Okay. That's a good place maybe where we can so I'm not sure exactly how it works, but my understanding, like in an Amish community or whatever, that they don't, like, I think I read some story, like some guy came in and shot up a bunch of their kids, and I don't even think they want to press charges, right?
Yeah.
Like they just forgive them, and so to me, that's like a great example where they live a very moral, they try to do what they think God wants them to do, and they're not returning to the state to solve their problems. So they're not trying to overthrow the government, but in their own personal lives, they're not propping it up to the extent either.
Yeah, but they have their own systems, though. They're not pacifists. Like they punish severely murder, rape, theft. Yeah.
Okay, so again, I think it may be conflict. I mean, you asked me the question, so I answered you honestly. But one could believe in a market-based private property framework and not be a pacifist. All right, so
but who grants your private property?
Well, I mean, I think there's legal traditions. Like you could say, who determines whether an English sentence is grammatical or not? It's people can tell. There's rules of grammar
legal
in English.
Traditions would grant you your private property. Legal traditions.
Yeah, I mean, there's British common law, and you're saying like
sarcastically.
The guys with
the guns. No, I'm not. It sounds ridiculous. I'm not trying to be mean, but it's like, so your private property is protected by legal traditions. Like, that's funny. I'm not trying to be mean. It's obviously funny. Like, I honestly, I'm not trying to be combative.
Mm-hmm.
So legal tradition. So if a bunch of Armenians come to your land and take it, and you say, but our legal traditions though, like, you don't see the humor in that?
Well, no, but you said what grant? I mean, if you want to say like what enforces the protection of private property, but I thought you were asking me how do we know who the rightful owner? I guess that's what's going on in this discussion. Is it seems like you keep flipping back and forth between.
I'm not flipping at all.
What
grants you your private property is violence. That's a fact.
Okay,
That's
but then like, I don't understand. Like, why are you against the sodomites? They've taken over. So, too bad for you, Owen. If you go get more guns, that's the answer.
What
you know what I mean? Like, it seems like no, you're clinging to an objective morality, and you want to say those people are doing bad things I don't like. So if somebody steals my stuff, I think the first issue at hand is just to say, yeah, that was my car and that guy stole it. That was my bike and someone stole it. Right. It's not, hey, where was the government to protect your bike? I guess it's not your bike, because whoever physically controls it, that's because property titles mean nothing.
So it's his.
No, I'm not.
No, I'm just joking, man.
Yeah.
Like, I'm totally kidding. Like,
right. Okay.
Yeah, no. I'm saying now you're starting to hit me close to home with the bike. Got a lot of trauma around that.
But you see what I'm saying?
It really is his bike now because I couldn't protect it.
Okay, but you actually don't believe it. And I know you think he stole it from you.
He did.
So I'm saying to determine like why was that your bike? I mean, there's norms and things derived from going way back, Roman law and whatever. So there's one element of saying what does it mean to say who's the rightful owner of that, and people can disagree. But I mean, I'm saying it's not merely let's just go see who has more guns. No, I mean there really is a distinction between saying somebody took something that was theirs or was not theirs, and theft happens, but theft is still a concept.
Racially homogenous areas that are small enough, I agree with you. Like, people can just do the right thing because everyone is like knows each other. But like, I'm talking about granting private land. Let's talk about land. Like, I get what you're saying. I honestly do. It's like everyone. A lot of people do just kind of know what to do, and it's like, that's Timmy's bike. It's like, bring it back. Bring it back. You don't need to call the cops to like have a kid return the bike, even though he might have thrown it in the river. It was either Jamal. I get it. The cold case is still open, but it's like, for me, it's about property. I don't mean like a bike. Like, I think your way of thinking is more applicable with basic stuff. Like, if someone just takes your car, people would be like, especially if you're in a small enough community, they'd be like, that's wrong. Like, that is a legal tradition. I understand the legal tradition thing. The reason I thought that sounded like that I was making fun of it is I was talking about like your house and your land.
Right.
And invaders.
Right. And so I'm saying, I think it would totally make sense. Just like right now that, there's property titles and there's rules of title transfer and things like that. And I'm saying, I don't think that's all propped up because thank goodness we have elections periodically and there's guys with guns.
By violence, by sheriffs. Yeah. I mean, I know.
No, when I say,
what's that?
But again, a distinction between enforcing it and the actual recognition and the legal, jurisprudence behind it to say who owns that plot of land. And to answer that question, it's not that we say, well, let's see who has the most ammunition. It's like, well, no, this person bought it. We have a record, and then he transferred this money, and they both signed off, and they had lawyers.
What if someone's like, no, I don't. I'm just going to take it. It was stolen from my people 400 years ago. Then what?
Okay, so
what if you got an American Indian moves into your house right now and says, "Is mine? You stole it from me 1,000 years ago." What do you do about it?
Okay, so I think again the system. I've written things about this that I, to the extent possible, would want to have arbitration, and so there would be people that would have reputations for giving. Judgments on particular cases. You sit down with Steve stealing bike and he says, "Oh, thank you. Coyotes say I own house. Thank you for arbitration. My house now." What do you do then? Say that again. So let's say you have an arbitration with the Indian that stole your house. And he's like, "My name is Chief Sittinghouse." And you're like, "Oh, hey, Chief Sittinghouse. We have a really great reputation. This guy is great. He's an arbitrator." And the arbitrator's like, "Listen, we have this great legal tradition." He goes,
your people stole land from me 800 years ago. Coyote and turtle say mine. What do you do then? And then all those people are like, white man steal house and car. We take back. Woo! Okay, so then what? So then you have your arbitrator go, has anyone had a grapefruit? I mean, we have a snack bar. Like that's why I was like laughing about, because there has to be violence.
Okay, and right, and so like I say, it's sort of like you know, I do think, like, I don't drink, but yet I think alcohol should be legal, certainly for adults who want to buy it. And so
Okay.
I personally am a pacifist. I think in a society like I'm envisioning it, there would be the use of violence.
Yeah, you
though
want
I
other people to
personally
do
would
your
do it.
violence. I get it.
Okay, so
I'll be your huckleberry if you need help. You know, if we're in a stateless place and you need a couple Idaho guys to help you, you know, I got you.
okay, so yeah, yes, there would be.
Do you eat
You know,
meat?
what's that?
Do you eat
Yes,
meat?
I eat meat. Mm-hmm.
Would you kill an animal to eat it?
Yeah, I'm not morally opposed to it. I would probably be squeamish the first couple times, but yeah, I'd get over it.
Well, that's good.
Okay.
I'm not trying to be a jerk. It's just
No, I know,
more
I know,
people
I
think
get it,
it's
I get
immoral
it.
to kill animals. Yeah.
So that's why I think maybe you didn't understand why I was bringing it up. That's why I was trying to establish a baseline with the schooling, like to say, can you understand a system where, like, if I'm against property taxes to fund schools that everyone is forced to contribute to, especially if they're teaching things that I think are crazy, that doesn't mean I'm against education, right? I
When
would
you
want there to
want
be
to,
voluntary
wouldn't you
means.
want to say that the government should regulate that they don't teach this horror to kids? Like,
But I'm saying, no, it's the government that is
because it
taking
was
people's money,
deregulated by the government, because the government is getting less regulated. It's more anarchist now than it's ever been.
but they're being this where the parents don't have much control is in the so-called public schools, right? They're going to the board meeting saying we don't want our kids being taught this, and they're saying too bad, and they can't afford to send them to a private alternative because they're being taxed their property taxes. So the government is
No, I agree
backing them
that
into a corner.
I get that, but that happens when you deregulate the government and you morally can't even verbally condemn influencers like Michael Malice pushing the very things they're teaching in school. Like, that's why it happens. And so they know that these parents, you know, aren't even capable of verbally being against it on Twitter. So it's like, they know that there's no juice there, and they'll be like, we'll do whatever we want. And there's nothing you're going to, like, not only are the parents not going to do anything about it, they're not even going to condemn it. Like, they can't even say two guys can't get married. They're broken. They're like weak, broken slaves. And so it's like, okay, so the first step is you have to start verbally saying that two guys can't get married and Blair White is not a beautiful girl, right? And then once you do that, you have enough people that say, we won't tolerate it, you know, because sometimes they just go on virtue signal. They just go there and just say this stuff, but secretly they're all watching pornos and doing all that stuff. So, you know, you get a sense if people are actually serious about it. And so the state's like, we'll do whatever we want. And we know that you're all in debt and you're all watching porn, you're all just getting drunk, and so enjoy the toilets, you know? And that's the reality of the situation.
Okay, so
I fought it. Like, I fight
Right.
it actively every day of my life. And the way you do it is with your actions, where you be productive, get out of debt, homeschool your kids, grow your own food, like, build the people that are going to oppose this in the future. And you oppose it peacefully. Like, I believe in pacifism when it comes to opposing the government. I think January 6th and all that stuff was nonsense. I was calling it out as it was happening. I'm like, don't go somewhere acting like you're tough if you're not willing to be tough. And if you try and fight the government, they'll kill you. Like, that's a fact. They're the alpha dog, you know? So whining and complaining and just going, we've had enough. No, you want to really threaten them? Those truckers that are honking their horn, how about all those guys say, okay, to oppose you, we will give free trucking to any business that stays open during the pandemic. That's called actual rebellion that works, because you're not going antler to antler with an alpha. You're just like, okay, I will contribute my time and my resource to help local business that opposes lockdowns. That gets them listening. That gets them changing. People are like, I'm here and I'm queer. It's like, they're just broken slaves. And it's like, they're just whining and annoying. And that's why, if we deregulate enough, I think the private industries will just liquidate these people as liabilities. And they'll do it with their own consent, They'll just get wiped. Anybody in debt, anyone on food stamps, anyone owed money by retirement, the real free market would take these people and wipe them off the planet. And you would do it without violence. You'd say, here's a job, move that barrel over there. They get thyroid cancer and then they're dead because there's poison in the barrel. That's how you get rid of mice.
A lot there. Let me go back.
It's true though, and
the marriage. Let's go to the marriage one, because I think that's again a great illustration of how we don't like the current situation, and yet. So
you think two gay guys that sodomize each other are married under God?
No, and so the point is that's why the political authorities should have nothing to do with marriage, and so you're looking at it as, oh, well, they got it wrong. Let's just get the right people in office, and then they'll turn it back to being right.
People consent to it. They want it because they're broken morally.
Right. And so if you think that's wrong, like, shouldn't you favor an approach where individual epicenters of power can have, like, so this church over here, that we can marry people in our jurisdiction, and these people over here, if they believe in that, as opposed to this coercive state that comes in and says, no, we're in charge of marriage in all 50 states because we've got some guys in robes and women in robes here, and they made this decree that goes out through all the land. And so that's what I'm getting at, is all these things you're pointing at are at least exacerbated, I would say, by the current people running the powers of the political
Yeah, they're
systems.
reflecting the moral will of the people, and they have control. And theorizing about getting rid of the government is like theorizing about being like getting rid of winter. It's like, they are the government. And the Bible especially says, basically, you get the government you deserve. Don't overthrow your government. Romans 13, all that stuff. It's right there. So that's why Christian anarchy is always very funny to me, where it's like they're reflecting the morality of the people. And the people have gotten worse morally. That's why I'm pushing people to at least be able to verbally say it's bad, raise your children and your families better, get out of debt, be productive. Don't promote people that are damaging the youth, and we'll have a brighter future. But as of right now, the government, it's holding on by a thread. And if they continue to degrade, we will be very easy to be conquered by any foreign power. And the idea that like people would respect our private property because of legal tradition. I mean, it's like, it's just not reality at all, Okay.
So I think we should wrap up. I just want to officially say it's not, again, the legal tradition stuff was to say, how would we determine objectively, who's the owner of that land? I agree. If a bunch of guys with guns are coming in,
they're already here.
You're going to need to, right? Because the federal government is not doing what it's.
Texas, Arizona, there's Mexicans that are already taking people's land, and there's nothing people can do about it because the government has gotten so weak there that the cartel is taking that position, and there's nothing anyone can do about it. It's like our government has gotten so weak that Mexican migrants can literally just take land, defend it with machine guns and cartel, and that's it.
Okay, but the reason the government is weak is not because Michael Malice has convinced them to reduce taxes to zero and cut spending, right? It's in other words, you're pointing to all these areas where the government is not doing what it's supposed to, even though it still taxes people like crazy and uses the money.
Against the existence of the government,
right?
Yeah, like what are you even talking about? Like, yeah. So you're saying that like you want the government stronger, or like you want no, you want
all the mechanisms of free society would use to combat these things you're talking about, the government doesn't allow. So it's If I wanted to start a private defense agency with 1,000 tanks and mercenary, the government would shut me down.
You want to start a government. You want to be a warlord.
No, but I'm saying whatever you want to call it.
A warlord.
Do you agree that the government right now would not allow that sort of a company?
A warlord? Yeah, the government would not allow you to start a private military.
Okay. No. So the government suppresses all competition, and then on all these things that you agree it should be doing, and says, "So this is why we exist, to protect you from."
The government suppresses warlords and cartels and gangs. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so it
Michael Malice, Michael Malice with a tank and a private army is a nightmare. A nightmare.
It would make a good movie, though.
Yeah, it'd be a funny movie. I mean, like a trans and a tank. I mean, it's just crazy. Imagine Verizon Wireless with an army. Yeah, I don't think most of these people have thought this through. Like BlackRock or Apple or Amazon getting an army. Freedom. Like saying to get rid of the government gets rid of the human will to dominate another human is nonsense. It's like, and I'm pretty sure Michael Malice is aware of this. You seem like a believer, which I respect. I get it. There's no way Michael Malice doesn't know that you can't get rid of the human desire to dominate another tribe by getting rid of its system. Like, obviously, if you weaken a population system, you take their government away, they're meat birds. You know, and I'm the most prepared out of everybody in this conversation for that exact scenario. And I thank God every day for our government.
Okay, let me just say one last thing on that, and then I'll give you the final word. Again,
have you enjoyed this, by the way? You're definitely putting this up and everything, right?
Oh yeah, I'll put it up.
Okay, good. Nice.
Yeah, enjoy is a strong. I haven't disliked it. It's difficult because again we're pointing at the same thing, and it's just weird to me that you're listing a bunch of things where the current U.S. government, you think, right, is run by satanic pedophiles, right? Is that a true statement?
They're more moral than Michael Malice.
Let's put aside Michael Malice.
No, I use it very. This is.
I don't want him to be dictator. So if that's the way you want to do it, that's fine.
The average anarchist is lower morality than the average FBI agent, obviously.
Okay, but the average anarchist doesn't directly. They're not taking 40% of my income, and they're not imposing fiat currency on us.
You want to play with fiat money? That's an offer. You can live in gold and silver. You can not have debt. Absolutely. That's an offer, and people get addicted to fiat. It's the #1 most profitable private business in human history. And the government kept it back for a while, and then the government got too weak to hold it back. And that's why the Middle Eastern governments are so powerful now, and they're getting wealthier by the day. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Oman, Kuwait, these places, because they ban usury. They ban sodomy, and they're going to take over. I mean, 15 kids, no usury. They just bought the PGA. They could buy New Jersey right now if they wanted to. No question. And they know force exists. They've been bombed. It's insane.
Okay.
Anyway, what's your final one?
Here's a one. Okay. Let's take a specific example just based on what you just said. So you're looking at the Federal Reserve Act. I would describe that as, yes, a bunch of corrupt private bankers and corrupt politicians. They all met in secret. They used fake names and stuff to go to Jekyll Island, hammered out what ultimately became the Federal Reserve Act, pushed that through, and that whole system is supported with the government backing it up, but to the benefit of private people. And so I'm saying, right. So if there weren't for the federal government there, that couldn't work. That it's allowing private interests.
The federal government, it'd be way
hijack.
Worse. It'd be even worse. It's like the only thing keeping it from going to the next level. Imagine if the federal government banking regulation, you saw a little bit of deregulation in 06, 07, where people started giving loans to like a plant, and then it just collapsed the whole industry. Regulation is what stabilizes the economy, and it's necessary for the working poor. Without the government, the working poor would be eaten alive by the oligarchs.
Okay. And again, I would just say, given that there are oligarchs and we have this machinery of the state, Doesn't that seem risky? Aren't the oligarchs going to be the ones that take control of that machinery?
They already have, unfortunately, taken a lot of the machinery, but we still have a federal government. And I'm very, very grateful that it still exists, because if they completely take it over, like Ukraine, you're looking at corruption that would just wipe out any dependent class, working poor. The dollar inflation would be insane. I mean, think about it. Like, the more they deregulate usury, the more the spending, the dollar goes. Because people, you said that on Twitter. You said that I claimed that my social media app failed and I'm blaming the free market, right? My app is not a failure. It's profitable and I have no debt and no outside funding. And I regulate it so that it's only the good, the true, the beautiful. There's no porn or nonsense or evil on it, right? People flourish there. Families are being started. I have 15,000 people on there. Small businesses, families, all this stuff is flourishing. But people are more addicted to cortisol. They're more addicted to dopamine. They want to see porn and fighting and killing. And so if you allow that, especially to young people, that's like gambling. They get addicted to it. It's very profitable for the little grabblers that benefit from that. And the government keeping that hell out keeps our nation prosperous, our families strong, the men working hard. But instead, if you deregulate, the most clicks, the most profit is the most disgusting pornography, the most vile stuff in the world. And that's the free market. It's not good for people. It's hell. Free market is free labor. Anybody in the world can come to your country, take over, whatever. It's Israelis could buy your road. Like it's people have either not thought it through or they're actively trying to take my country. And I don't appreciate that. And that's why I'll be doing these streams.
Okay. I'm glad you brought it up because I did want to clarify. Here's what I was saying about that tweet. So, of course, you're bigger than I am. So it wasn't that I was making like, oh, look at this fit. That's not what was going on there.
Huh? Oh, you mean bigger? Oh, you mean like height?
No. Popular. Oh, successful commercially. Okay. Yeah. Right. So I wasn't. What my point was, and not that you're going to agree with it, but just so you see, I think you you interpreted like as an insult or something. Is I was saying
insults is wrong.
Okay.
I'm not insulted. It's just
it looked like you are saying, hey, I launched this, my private group or whatever, and because the masses are into debauchery and so forth, that's why I'm not the most popular app in the world, or whatever the term would be.
Yeah,
I'm kidding, right? And so then I was saying, right, so because our culture is so sick, I don't want there to be a powerful state that the whims of the masses can then put people in power who then impose their sickness on everybody. Whereas if it was more decentralized and either very limited government or, in my view, like a more voluntary
regulation
system.
Of government, then it would be the most debaucherous of all time because that's the most profitable. The state, the bureaucracy, the limitation is always going to be a benefit to the people. The state's never going to be like, we command you to put pornos on the internet. No, they're always going to be pulling it back. And that's why the free market's so mad about it, because they're like, Pornhub's run by a Jewish rabbi, and they're profiting incredible.
He's a rabbi?
Money. He's a rabbi.
Okay, so I will go look at that later. I'm just going to say that I didn't know that.
A Jewish rabbi owns and runs Pornhub, and he's publicly said that he uses algorithms to bring trans porn to people's search histories. They're actively doing that. That should be banned. He should be in jail.
Okay. I will
That's
go investigate.
That's the free market.
That.
He's a rich fella, and I bet he's a libertarian anarchist. Every pedophile in federal prison right now thinks that they're being oppressed by the federal government.
Mm-hmm. Okay. For people who want to see your work, where should they go?
Well, I was kicked off all the corporate media because it's completely corrupted, but I'm still allowed to make my own because of the United States government. I can have my own LLCs and make my own platforms. So you can send me a letter with the United States Postal Service, which is still free, at P.O. Box 490, Sandpoint, Idaho 83864. You can subscribe to unauthorized.tv. You can watch me every day at unauthorized.tv. I'm also on Rumble, Telegram, rumble.com/Owen Benjamin, Telegram. I've been let back on Twitter for a bit, which is interesting. So I'm Owen Benjamin on Twitter. And I don't want people to think that this is hostile. It's like I'm just speaking what I believe to be true. And this is the free market of ideas. And I've been turned down by more anarchists. So I'll give you props that you are talking to me, which is good and strong. Like Dave Smith, Michael Mouse, these guys won't debate me or talk to me in public because they know they're wrong and they don't want to be embarrassed. And that's not the free market of ideas. Me and Dave Smith used to be like good friends. And now he won't stream with me because what? I'm going to ask some uncomfortable questions about usury and sodomy and regulations.
You bring that up. I think that's how you got, there was an episode, I don't know if you remember this, and this will be my closing remark. It was the three of you guys. I think you were all in studio together, and Malice made a self-deprecating remark about how, like, oh, Dave, it's your like shorter than average comedian friend and your taller than average comedian friend. And you said something like, hey, just get up on my shoulders and we'll go on adventures or something.
Yeah.
And I don't, do you remember that?
I still could like Malice.
Yeah.
That's the thing is like little tiny guys and giants can be friends. Like they hop on my back. We go on adventures together. But if they're going to be sneaky and try and pretend, like I know what they did to Goliath. You know, they used a slingshot, but they didn't let Goliath have a weapon. And then after they killed him, they clipped his ween. You know about that, right?
What do you mean they didn't have him what? Didn't he have a sword? Isn't that how David cut his head off?
David used a projectile. So,
right.
You know, they claim, okay, let's ban all slingshots. And, you know, the naive giant was like, oh, you know, my buddy, okay. And then he comes in with a slingshot, kills him. And then after he's dead, he circumcises him. He clips his ween after he's dead. And I guarantee Malice would do the same thing. Like, when David was trying to get Solomon's daughter, King Solomon was like, or it was King Saul. King Saul was like, bring me 100 foreskins. And he's like, okay. And then he brought him 200. He killed 200 and clipped all their dead weens, brought a bag of weens. It's a true story.
No, I was trying to keep
a
straight face.
My new special. You laugh about it. It's about King David trying to recruit his buddy where he's like, listen, we got to go on a mission. Just hear me out. He's like, well, what is it? Just be like, are you in first? And he's like, yeah, I guess I'm in. Okay, we got to, King Saul's daughter's like really hot, right? And he's like, yeah. He's like, okay, we got to kill some Philistines. He's like, did they do anything to us? It's like, no, but we're going to do it. But it's after they're dead. That's when you're going to see me do something weird. He's like, dude, I'm out. I'm like, you already said you're in. And so, that's why I have a weird relationship with really small people. Cause like me and Malice can go on adventures where he's on my shoulders and we can be buddies and he can know that the giant defends him when people come for him. Or he can pretend I'm a moon landing conspiracy theorist and push trans stuff on kids. And I know would clip my ween if I fell in battle. And I know he would do that. And they bite it too. They use their mouth. Malice. Let's be buddies again, Malice. Little dudes need giants. Don't keep kicking our shins. Because I'm 6'8". And I think Malice is no joke, like 4'8".
I can't think of a better way to end the episode than on that note.
All right, man. It's been a blast.
Yeah, my guest this week, folks, has been Owen Benjamin. Owen.
And have people check out my special, owenbenjamin.com, like that bit I just did. Like, don't take me too seriously. Like, I'm never running for government. Mm-hmm. I'm not into government. I'm not like going to be a tyrannical person ever. I have no ambition whatsoever of political power. I'm just calling it how I see it. And I find this stuff interesting. Mm-hmm. So just, if you're listening to me and your blood is boiling, just know I will never even run for dog catcher. I don't care. I don't even like the government. I'm just pointing out the macro reality of a government. That's all I'm doing.
Okay, thank you. Folks, the guest has been Owen Benjamin. Owen, thanks for your time.
And when is this going up? Because I'm going to share it. This is great.
I think my people can turn it around in 24 hours. So Thursday, like from our point of view, tomorrow night, Thursday.
That's all. Are your people going to like it, you think? You think your people are going to enjoy the...
Oh, they're going to watch it. They may have to publicly say one thing, but yeah, they're going to watch it.
Yeah, but they're going to be like, this is fun time. They're not going to censor. They're not going to make you take it down, right?
I don't know. We'll see. Maybe you're toxic. I mean, I'll try to post it and we'll see what happens.
But you told me that I didn't have to record this.
Oh, I'll give you the video.
Okay, cool.
No, I'm saying my pod, you know what I mean? Like where I post my podcast, I don't know if someone's going to flag it and take it down.
Think about how funny that is though, right?
Yeah.
Like that you have no actual freedom. Like, so because of my thought that the government isn't bad, I'm not allowed to be on your private platform. Just really think about that. If you actually are a freedom guy, that's terrifying. Okay?
I get your point.
Yeah. If you are marketing yourself as pro-freedom and you can't put this up where you put your podcast without any vulgarity in it,
oh no, the vulgarity was my own personal thing. I'm talking about, your radical views.
My radical views as a non-anarchist. Like, you see that you're inverted? This is an inversion.
Oh, I mean, I understand that what you're talking about. Yeah, it's crazy. All these private
put
companies.
Up Michael Malice with a trans, but not me as an actual independent family man living in a farm. Just if they do push back and say you can't put him up because of his radical views about the moon landing, like really, really think about what that means for the future.
Oh, I will. Yeah.
So you'll put this up.
I got your, and I'll give you the video. Yeah. I mean, yes, I am not going to censor you if that's what you're asking me.
But if someone you work with will tell you that you have to censor it.
Oh, no, not like a coworker. I'm saying whoever hosts, you know what I mean? Like,
oh no, I'll be good. They're actually letting me back on now. Like I'm way less toxic than I was viewed years ago because the trans thing became such a nightmare.
Yeah. Like more people came around on that. So you kind of got.
Like, I'm not even hated anymore. Yeah. At all.
Okay. Yeah. That's all. I didn't mean like some of my colleagues might say, "Geez, Bob."
Oh yeah. That's what I was worried about.
Meant.
They're like, Mouse, be like, "Hey man, what's up?"
No, he doesn't.
Don't ever talk to Malice, man. He needs more paternal. He needs a big brother. He does. He needs more guidance.
Well, maybe if he sees this, he'll think about that. And
Malice, listen to me right now. Make sure you send him this part. Let's be buddies. You know you need a strong giant in your life to straighten you out. I don't hate you at all. We've all been degenerates. I battle the cookie thing. I'm a little fat right now. I get it.
There you have it, folks. Owen Benjamin.
You've just experienced another episode of The Bob Murphy Show, the podcast promoting free markets, free minds, and grateful souls. For more information and to subscribe to this podcast, visit bobmurphyshow.com.